Okay, welcome everyone very much. This is our AOM MSR research webinar number 2, our third such event of the year, of the academic year. We had an event on first person research in September. Then we had another one, more community discussion on appreciative inquiry oriented discussion on the MSR division, MSR interest group in October. And then now we're having this discussion on consciousness and ethics. Very, very, very timely, I thought. So, so today's presentation is by Dennis Heaton. Dr. Dennis Heaton is professor of management, arguably the most senior researcher on management and consciousness. And he's also Dean of School of Business at Maharishi International University. And I'm your host, moderator, Anil Maheshwari. I'm also at MIU. And this year I'm representative at large for research for MSR. The agenda briefly would be, so we did the introductions for the first few minutes. We'd like to do 5-minute contemplation, presencing. Practice is everything. That's what Maharishi said. We can talk all day long, but without access, the practice, it won't be much. But anyway, then we will have a series of two sets of discussions and 2 different questions. Dennis, if that's exactly what you're doing, maybe you change something. But the idea is that there will be a short presentation from Dr. Heaton, then a small set of small-sized breakout groups of 3 each. And then coming back, debriefing, and then again, then we'll move to the next set of questions, next question. So there'll be 2 different questions on which you will have discussion, and then towards the end, we'll have main point summary and some information on the next webinar, which is actually coming up February 2nd. So I would just welcome everybody and say, please sit back and just relax and do your settling down. Any contemplation technique, any meditation technique, whatever brings you here now, please sit back, relax, close your eyes, and don't worry about the time. I'll let you know in 5 minutes. Okay, thank you. I'll pause the recording. Okay. Welcome back. So we are having a wonderful session on consciousness and ethics. So at this point, let me invite Dr. Dennis Heaton, who is the speaker for today, and he will present, and then we will have breakout sessions, and again present, and then some breakout sessions, and then we'll have some main points. Go ahead, Dennis.
Thank you, Anil. I'll start by saying a thesis for today, that a research paradigm to investigate the impact of spirituality and religion on management will embrace the essential role of consciousness in research and education. Maharishi International University has a consciousness-based paradigm of education. One of the ways it's represented is in this figure. Consciousness is primordial, and being conscious, it's conscious of itself. So we can intellectually conceive of consciousness as being a knower, and knowing itself being a known, and also being the process of knowing. And this model of knower, process, knowing, and known is kind of like a heuristic that can apply to many things, including some areas of research, which we'll talk about later today. My talk will continue on this theme, Beyond Positivism, First Person Research, which was presented by Tom Cullum on September 30th. And we're going to be conducting some first person research in our breakout by sharing with each other.
Dennis, your slides are not moving. If you would stop sharing and share again, and then if you could also go into full screen mode, that'll be great.
Thank you. I'm going to click the right window, I hope, and let's see if this shares it. You're saying the first person research slide?
Right, right.
And I'm going to move to the next slide. You're seeing peak experience slide?
Right.
Okay, we got it now. Okay. So we're going to ask each other to share our personal stories about peak experiences and their transformative impact, to recognize how our development as a person, as a knower, affects the research we pursue, the knowledge we create, and the actions we undertake. Peak experiences is a concept that was written about by Abraham Maslow in Tortoise Psychology of Being, when he looked at self-actualizing individuals, looking at extraordinarily healthy and successful people, that they tend to have had some peak experiences which were instrumental in their development as a person. These experiences include characteristics like sense of unity of the self, oneness with the environment, non-forcing, free of inhibition, timelessness, unmotivated by need, etc. So I will first describe a peak experience that was significant in my life. I was a 20-year-old undergraduate college student, and I had been reading something inspiring, and then an elevated state came upon me. It was physically calm, deeply relaxed, and a feeling of being untouchable, a liberating awareness of my own immortality, a sense of being beyond time and being untouchable. It was just very calm, very peaceful experience. And in that moment, I had a realization that this being can never die. And with this sense of immortality came a liberation, a freedom from fear. This is not a permanent experience, but it was a transformative, spontaneous peak experience at a young age. I have understanding about this more now from my studies, including some passage in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, about the inner self, that weapons cannot cleave him, fire burn him, water cannot wet him, nor wind blow him away. This is a concrete experience of being, as described by Maharishi in his Science of Being, which he says, existence, life, or being is the unmanifest reality of all that exists, lives, or is. Being is the ultimate reality of all that is, was, or will be. It is eternal and unbounded, the basis of cosmic life. And so this kind of statement is like an intuitive realization when one has some personal experience. Maslow said that such peak experiences can bring a cognition of being, a realization that reality is independent of the perceiver, and also that the perceiver is independent of the perceived. And such experiences can move a person from deficiency motivation toward being motivation. And I think this peak experience did influence my cognition and my motivation. Looking back, this momentary experience of unboundedness came about as I was growing to be more independent and post-conventional in my life decisions. This experience of consciousness and some experiences of conscientiousness seemed to be correlated. Prior to this particular experience, I had gone through a crisis in my student years. I had a scholarship from the US Navy and therefore a contract to serve during the Vietnam War. But I became a war protester and a conscientious objector. I gave up my scholarship despite a threat of being drafted immediately, which didn't happen. But I did become more independent as a person going through that type of life event. I believe the consequence of both that crisis and the peak experience were liberating me to make life decisions that were not so conventional, where other people might say, I can't do that because. It may have been the same day as that peak experience that this poem came to me, and I'll share the screen so you can follow the words as I read. To right 1,000 wrongs or more, rather than a single song, a score, the too big a mirror tempting me to stone, I am but brain upon the bone. Every senseless folly of the thrall, I'll set it straight, outdo them all. I am a mouth machine, a wit, no better for my so smart use of it. Unless I call the man and not the act to heart and not to mind, and kiss the pact, forgive with hope that he will me forgive, and ponder not to fight, instead to give. To find my peace is all you would me do, and love remembered, life again is true. The first 8 lines of this poem lay out a challenge. The author is aiming to right the world, but realizing that brains and wit are not enough. Then 6 lines resolve this challenge, particularly in the line, ponder not to fight, instead to give. Whereas a key word in the first 8 lines is wit, the emphasis in the next lines shifts from brain to heart. Love remembered, life again is true. And the slogan came to me also, to give is not to fight. The protester that had been judging and discontent and now has inner peace to do good work, free from anger or fear. So I think this is a case of some being motivation enlivened by peak experience. So now, that is a preface, let's ask each of us to share some experience of any variety of experiences that may have had a meaningful impact of how inner life has been transformative to our life and work. So, breakouts. Are there any questions or comments about what I've said so far?
Dennis, could you type the other question in the chat room so people can actually read it? What is the question to you? What is the impact of your peak experience?
Yeah, I've got that on a slide, and so I'll just paste it in there.
Okay.
Who can set up some breakout rooms?
I'm setting up. Groups of 4 or 5, right?
No, I think it would be 3 because of the time being limited. We want, to hear from each person in their small group.
Okay. So let me.
And we could have 15 minutes for the group discussion, because this is first person research.
Okay.
So I'll type in the chat.
Okay. And I'm just recreating the groups. There'll be 8 groups of 3 each. As soon as you finish typing in, I'll just. Okay.
Share a personal experience and its transformative impact. Personal peak experience.
Share a personal peak experience and its transformative impact. So how long is this discussion? 15 minutes or
15
minutes? 15 minutes. Okay.
3.
There you go, everybody. We'll see you in about 15 minutes.
I'll drop in and visit. Thanks.
Okay, welcome back. So everybody in the group, obviously you had some rich discussions, I'm sure. Let's start with whoever wants to share what you heard in your group, and was this a peak experience being in this group itself for some people? Hearing other people's peak experience. Open discussion, whoever wants to go first. Any group, any person.
Well, I'll go.
Okay. Jody, then Jody and
No,
Judy.
go ahead, Judy.
Jody and Judy, we're the same thing.
Judy, I was tripping on myself.
This has been going on a long time, you know. I mean, this is not the first time this has happened.
Yeah, my twin brother, Jody.
That's right. That's right.
So it was a peak experience to be with the two women that I was with, Melody and Mokse. They shared deeply from the heart their experiences and how that's really made them passionate about the academic work that they're doing, and really hungry for creating peace in the world. And there was a theme of the power of women and shifting consciousness, and the strong women, strong women shifting consciousness. And so when we listened to each other's stories, I think each story helped us to go deeper, because we're so touched that our hearts got open from what the others had to share. I think I'll leave it at that and see if Melody or Mokse would like to add anything.
None, then let's move to Jody. Thank you, Judy.
Well, I think what came up, your stories are different, but they're the same in a way. You know, there's the commonality of this recognition of our separateness, the recognition of separateness in the experience through because having a sense of oneness. I don't know if that makes any sense or not, but and that creates a shift in perspective. For me, it created a shift that didn't manifest for a while. But regardless, it creates sort of a shift to move toward the oneness, I guess, is, whatever the contexts are always different. But it creates when we talked about knowing versus being, which has been a big piece of, kind of my work lately, and how the interplay there, you have the knowing and you have the experience of being, and it shifts the context within which you know. And then that drives what we do. And so, I don't know, maybe I read too much in that. So maybe my other folks can maybe tell me I'm full of it or whatever anyway.
You're full of bliss, Jody.
Well, let me know when it shows up. So,
thank you. Maybe we can go to another group.
anybody? Okay.
Or somebody from the group if they want to supplement.
You raising your hand, Chris?
Yes, I'm happy to share from my group.
Yes, please.
So I was with two wonderful colleagues, Ritika and Cherry, from Delhi and London, respectively. And, one had an experience that was more from a spiritual practice perspective, and the other from a religious perspective. And I've always been struck by how both are pathways to, again, as Jody mentioned, a sort of common experience. I shared my own practice, which is in my own peak experience, which was also more a spiritual, a secular one. But ultimately, some of the commonalities that came up in our conversation were having one day an experience of deep connection, that life is beautiful, that you feel calmer, and that you experience a different kind of happiness, a happiness from within. A sense that everything is in order. And as one of my colleagues said, something happened which I find interesting because in some ways it's difficult for us to name it. It's an unnameable. And also this connection with your God or with you know, a faith-based connection gives a person what could be called a taste of heaven or a taste of the transcendent. So that's and again, I would invite Ritika and Sherry, anything you would like to add to that?
I think you have summed up, Chris. Thank you. You've summed up what I've said very well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
I
Once
found
again,
that in the small group I was in, I was asking like an appreciative inquiry question, which is common in appreciative inquiry to kind of go back to what was your original inspiration, what got you here, what, you know, what's the highlight, and this was helpful to maybe even rekindle something that got a person started on a particular path, and then to relive that experience. So I found that the appreciative inquiry process was helpful in this dialogue. I was asking Sherilyn if she would mind sharing something, and then she said she was parking her car, and I don't know if I can see her here now. Well, she had a moment of giving up in a long dissertation process where she turned to the Lord, and then she got a sense that there was a purpose and there was a calling. And so this was a transformative experience with more of a religious context, but it led to her research interest coming out of this kind of personal life, which may be the case of others of us who are migrated to management, spirituality, and religion.
thank you, Dennis. That's
Right.
thank you.
So the general,
Let's go to another group. Yeah. Oh, you did have one to add from your group? For the,
no, I could move on if there's no one else.
no, let's see. Let's hear from the other groups. So briefing.
Yes, I could go for it.
Yeah, please go ahead, Kennedy.
Yes, for me, the peak performance, I've had many experiences, but there is one that I remember so much, even before I became introduced to transcendental meditation. I think it happened for me when I was making a presentation to a group of 200 people on a topic that is very difficult. And that was I was presenting on the chartered financial analyst topic. I was helping candidates to pass the exam for level 1. So there were 200 of them, and I was the one making the presentation. So this program is very difficult and challenging, not only for the candidate, but also for the presenter. So at the moment when I was doing the presentation, I had this moment where in the room of 200 people, I had only one focal point. I could only see one point. No matter how much I want to move my eyes was only going to one point. And then my ideas were just flowing in my mind. Mathematical concepts were just coming out of my mind. And I could say them with so much fluency that the participants were amazed. I was also amazed myself how these ideas were coming out of my mind without, I wasn't looking at the book, I wasn't looking at the slides, but everything was just coming within, and I felt very calm and very happy. And I think that was a moment of a realization for me. And it was a realization point, but I didn't know much further until when I came to MIU. I began learning these ideas and then trying to reflect on what has happened in my past and trying to connect that those could have been those moments. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Kennedy. That's a good, rich experience. Let's see from a couple of rooms haven't spoken. Let's say room 1, I guess, Charlie, Raj, or Venkata. Who wants to represent what happened in the group?
Okay. We had excellent discussions. The gist of it is when someone tells you that you would fail, instead of getting depressed, you may get motivated to double your efforts to succeed. So someone discouraging you doesn't need to actually get you getting discouraged. You may probably getting encouraged and then succeed. That is one thing. Second thing is, if you help someone at the time of need, there is a possibility that person may help many more because that person received help in time and he knew, he or she knows what the help is worth and how crucial help is at the time of need, then that person can get motivated to help many more. It happened with my brother, handicapped brother, actually. He was affected by polio and all. So he did not go to school until I completed my college and got job.
Thank you.
And
I think Venkata we just wanted to describe what happened in the group.
So yeah, the group and Dr. Rajashekar mentioned about getting cured by self instead of depending on someone else. So he actually got himself cured, and when people were saying that he cannot speak properly, he got that cured through meditation, through spirituality, and he became a professor actually. So that is one thing. And Charlie was saying about the music, the power of music. The music has brought a lot of positive things in his life, especially classical music. So that is what Charlie said. So these are the main things.
Thank you. Thank you. And the last but not the least, anybody, Charlie or Raj, if you need to add.
No, I was impressed by the story shared by Venkata about his brother, and I just talk about the secular music of Johann Sebastian Bach. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go finally to group 3. I think Barbara and others were there. Anybody wants to go from that group? Were there Barbara and
it was Helen, Razor, and I. Razor did not have audio. And I think the common element with Helen and I is that we had an experience that was out of the ordinary. In her case, it was religious. In my case, it was a spiritual experience, but that it stayed with us all of our lives. And there was a profound inner shift that made both of us stronger and more resilient. And that the memory of that experience and the enactment of the integration of knowing and being of that experience, I think, has remained with us all of our lives. Yeah, I think I'll leave it there. Helen, you might want to add something.
I think you covered it quite well. We both, there definitely was a shift and we became stronger and a lot more confident. So what we said is if we compare ourselves over the years from when the experience happened to now, it still remains with you quite profoundly. Thanks. And I think for me that you can remember, that shift happens when you can remember the experience so clearly, then you know it was for real. It wasn't just something fleeting. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. And from our group, Sai or anybody wants to talk about it? What did you hear in our group, group 8? Tamirat? Okay, maybe I'll speak for the group. I think the themes have been discussed. It's just that unnameable, life becomes blissful. Chris, you said life is beautiful. Maybe that is the one moniker we'll take away from this. So certainly with the peak experience, life certainly looks so much more beautiful. And for one person, it was about getting visa, being 1 in 100 people like are getting visa after so many tries and feeling like the top of the world. Or for another person, sort of having to shift to another country again, related to visa, both for MI students, how much effort one goes through to get to where one gets is just amazing, and some of them are very, very profound experiences. And the thing Suresh and I were discussing also how life can become very your clarity can come. You can feel very, very clear in terms of what's happening to you. And Suresh was describing how the listening power goes up right after some kind of a peak experience, or even a micro peak experience, like a long night when you have good meditation experience. You become certainly very more open and listening. Okay, so that was first part. So thank you everybody for participating. Back to Dr. Heaton.
Yeah, thank you everybody for sharing these stories and, for building our relationships by having these meetings together. So I also want to take this moment to thank Anil and thank MSR for this fellowship. So a more abstract point about all of this is we were talking about the knower, process of knowing and known, and who we are as a knower is very instrumental in how we construct knowledge. So we come back to this theme of post-positivism. Positivism is somehow thinking that knowledge is all objective and independent of who is the researcher. It doesn't ring true in terms of who we are, what our life is, and how we go about pursuing knowledge and constructing knowledge. And so I think this is one of the fundamentals of MSR research paradigm, is that it embraces the knower. It may do this in qualitative research, and even in quantitative or more objective research with reflexivity about who I am and why I'm researching, and just keeping the person in the story of the research. So I would draw these conclusions that experience can transform the mindset and knowledge that we have, and this has consequences in action. Experience is an essential component of MSR research. It opens the mind to new intellectual understanding. And intellectual understanding as well can be it can be a catalyst to experience. So MSR is progressing by bringing consciousness to the fore intellectually and experientially, which can bring paradigm shifts in the discipline of business. So what kind of research do we pursue? There are a number of researchers here in this meeting. I've got a few slides reviewing some of the research related to work done at Maharishi International University. Harold Harung and Fred Travis published a couple of books. This one is readable and summarizes a number of research studies that they did. That we're looking at world-class leaders in business, sports, and the arts. And they used 3 measures. And when we ask ourselves, what do we mean when we say higher consciousness? We have to kind of say, well, how could we operationalize that or collect data about it? Certainly, personal experiences is one form of research, and we might go beyond Abraham Maslow and you know, develop something based on just the stories that we share and that we collect through this kind of qualitative research. So this research used 3 instruments, one called Peak Experiences, a questionnaire on higher states of consciousness, one called Moral Reasoning, the Gibbs Social Reflection Questionnaire, and then there were some electroencephalographic measures of brain integration. An interesting thing is that these 3 measures highly correlate with each other. So we could say that a person who has a more integrated brain has more experiences of higher states of consciousness. A person who has more experiences of higher states of consciousness tends to score higher on a test of moral development. So that's a kind of a direction of research integrating psychology and physiology. This is the questionnaire on higher states of consciousness, which Harold Harung called peak experiences in his research, but the actual, what do we mean by peak experiences, was based on this, first of all, questions about experiences of transcendental consciousness, number 1, 2, and 3 here, a state when the mind is awake but quiet, completely peaceful state of mind beyond limitations of thought, time and space. So again, people who had more frequent experiences scored higher on the other instruments, but also tended to be differentiated by their career success. The comparison groups were people who were not at as accomplished a level in their various professions. The topic that was announced was ethics, and I think we've talked about ethics now in saying that higher states of consciousness is related to higher scores on a test of moral development. And to go beyond moral development theory, I contributed a chapter in a book about managing by the Bhagavad Gita, which was edited by Diman and Amar, and then was a symposium at the Academy of Management. It was in 2019, the All Academy theme, MSR, ODC, and OB, and MSR gave a recognition as a best MSR symposium proposal. I didn't attend MSR that year, and Anil presented on my behalf. The wisdom from the Bhagavad Gita is that the wise leaders act without personal attachment. And I want to highlight a couple of important verses from chapter 2 of the Gita. Verse 45, a manager can become independent of possessions, and 48, balanced in gain and loss. These are the full verses. The Veda's concern is with the 3 gunas. Be without the 3 gunas, O Arjuna, freed from duality, ever firm in purity, independent of possessions, possessed of the self. Independent of possessions, Niryogakshema, possessed of the self, Atmavan. So this experience of the transcendent self beyond the world of boundaries, beyond the gunas, is experience of unity or oneness. It's freed from duality. And it is the ground for ethics in that it allows one to be ever firm in purity and independent of possessions. And in Maharshi's commentary, he says, is the tendency to possess that tempts a man to wrong action. So I think until, this is my theory of ethics now, that one is really established in this self-realization, there's this temptation or tendency to possess that can lead us to distort things a little bit this way or another way we might even recognize in ourselves. And so when this experience becomes more stable in one's life and one is able to perform action, established in yoga, then one can act in a way that is balanced in success and failure. Transcendental meditation is a process for taking one's conscious mind from active level to the quiet experience, the most peaceful level of the mind, transcendental consciousness. And this experience of something beyond thought was also brought up by Tom Coleman in his references to Taoism in the last session of this symposium series. The give up indulgence in conceptual thought, and this is Tao, which cannot be spoken. So let's see, where do we want to go with the remaining time? I want to talk a little bit about quantum leadership theory and Chris Laszlo's work, because I've been using that book in teaching at RSU International University. We've described our PhD program in our university catalog in terms of 1, 2, and 3, which when I wrote this, it was in terms of number 1, the knower, developing holistic consciousness. Number 2, the process of knowing or process of managing, how organization practices transform. And number 3, what are the holistic outcomes encompassing economic, social, and environmental results? So that's kind of a framework for a holistic approach to PhD management. This is a model from the book Quantum Leadership by Sal and Laszlo. And similarly, across the top, if we look at shift in consciousness, creative and evolving leadership, and flourishing, I think we see the same 3 knower, process of knowing and known. And this model on the left-hand side says that the practices of mindfulness and connectedness, which can include personal, organizational, and system-wide practices, can bring about a shift in consciousness. In the research that was done for Joe Leah's dissertation and is reported in the Quantum Leadership book, there were instruments measuring each of these boxes or curved boxes in this model. And I've just identified some additional approaches that might be used for measuring what could be called consciousness. Chris came to our university and gave a talk. This is a screenshot from when Anil videotaped it, and it's a quote from the Quantum Leadership book. Our contention is that we need to change leaders at their most fundamental level of being, at their level of consciousness. Quantum leaders are anchored in a new consciousness of connectedness that leads them to pursue well-being, prosperity, and flourishing, because that is who they are. So I'd like to mention, Chris, that I have been having our PhD students read this and look at the research. And we had Joe Leah talk in a seminar to our PhD students. And I'd be interested in collaborating with you and Fred Sal, if possible, to extend this research looking at quantum leaders, looking at what are the experiences that they've had. Fred Sal talks in the early chapters of the book about the kind of journey he went through personally, and a quest for wholeness, quest for holistic health, and how that relates to transforming people's leadership, who they are and how they interact and what impacts they have. I think this is a really powerful paradigm for research, for the field of management. We can say for MSR, but beyond MSR. And I'd encourage PhD students from NYU who are present here to try to hook into that model and see where we can extend that research with the replications and with the additional measures, and I'd like to invite Chris to respond.
Well, thank you for the highlighting some of the research behind quantum leadership, which, as you say, is very much aligned with the model and the research that you presented today. What I would say to all those who are here, particularly doctoral students, is to invite them to be part of the MSR community, Management, Spirituality, and Religion interest group at the Academy of Management, where we have many colleagues here who have been leaders and senior scholars, many on the call here today. Also Anil, I think Anil had to leave us, but Anil is now the representative at large for research for MSR. So at MSR, you can find this kind of work and opportunities for collaboration, to find possibly, job opportunities and participating in the annual conference at MSR. Judy just put in, thank you, Judy, Neil, put the link to MSR in the chat. And the last thing I want to say is that there's also a group that is launched now called the Global Consciousness Institute, GCI. And Judy, if you would put the link to GCI in as well. It's a new effort that is an effort to actually build in 3 areas. Transforming business education, transforming business practices, and movement building. So please join that as well as staying part of this community, this broader community. Anyway, thank you again, Dennis, for a wonderful talk today, and pass it back to you.
Yeah, I don't think we have time to do another breakout. The intent, though, is to encourage research collaboration and see what ideas people have to go further in these types of areas of research. And I think something that is coming to the fore is this global consciousness. I would invite Judy to say more about why perhaps your work is shifting into this direction and why global consciousness is a hot thing for you.
Thank you, Dennis, and thank you so much for today and a great presentation and a great sense of interconnectedness that has been created here today. It really feels precious. Yeah, as you know, Dennis, both of us have been working in workplace spirituality for decades and looking at particularly the leverage that corporations can provide in shifting consciousness in the world. And it occurs to me, after doing this work for a long time, it has felt like it's not working as fast as the world needs to focus just on the workplace, and that we need to shift our focus to transcend and include the corporations and the institutions and really look at consciousness in a planetary, global kind of way, because the issues that humanity faces are global. As we know, the climate change and wars and COVID and the systems breaking down. And so that's a breakdown in consciousness. And we believe that you have to have breakdown before breakthrough, and that there's a huge opportunity right now on the planet, in humanity, to make what Chris calls crossing the ontological gap from one level of consciousness to the next. And we need to do that individually, and we need to do that collectively. So that's why I've kind of not shifted my work, but expanded my work. And I wanted to say that there's a project that we're doing at the Global Consciousness Institute that we can invite collaboration. And thank you for that invitation about collaboration. And it's called Mapping the Terrain of Global Consciousness. And it has 2 aspects to it. The first is to find out who is doing what in terms of organizations. What organizations are focused on global consciousness as a primary focus of why they exist? And so what universities are doing, what kinds of teaching research programs, what nonprofits are doing. There's a handful of for-profit organizations looking at global consciousness. So we want to map them using software like Kumu to create a map that anyone could come in and see this picture of the relationships between these organizations and get information on the map of all those people and organizations involved. The second, and this is where we can particularly involve students, is that we want to start interviewing some of the leaders of those organizations to find out more about their mission, their vision, their values, and their stories, and to create this rich qualitative data about these organizations so that we get a sense of the field as a knower and as being known and is in the process of knowing. So we are really looking at involving anyone who's interested in helping us collect that information. So I'm going to put my name in the chat, my email in the chat. So if anyone's interested in being involved in that, it's going to be a few more months before we actually have a protocol and can invite people, but we're moving pretty rapidly on that project. So I'll put my email in the chat and you can get in touch with me. Thanks for asking, Dennis.
Yes, an image of surfing just came to my mind, and surfers looking for a big wave to ride. And if you ride the wave, then it provides all the momentum.
Yes.
And I believe that global consciousness is now wave, which you've put your surfboard on, and it's not something that we make, it's something that's happening, but it's a joy to be seeing evolution take place on a collective scale. And the more we connect, I think, the more we amplify that phenomenon and bring it out so that it becomes part of academic discourse and invites more people. So in that regard, I think that MIU certainly wants to align with this, but I feel also that whatever it is we can contribute to a global consciousness is going to be strengthened through partnerships and through joint enjoyment. So the world is transforming, and it is transforming in a rapid and positive way. Even though sometimes the media overemphasizes negative things. And I enjoyed last week a presentation by David Cooper Ryder for students of Case Western Reserve MSOD program. And he was certainly reviewing the positive developments that are taking place. And I guess I'll share one takeaway from that. Is he going to be speaking soon, Chris, in this series?
Anil has invited him to speak in an MSR webinar series. Yes, we're fixing the date still, but we're hoping to have David Cooper Ryder in December or following month. Anil is the best resource for that.
Yeah, I think he mentioned he was working on it. So I would encourage everybody to come to that and really be uplifted. And one of the takeaways I got from listening to David Cooper Ryder this week was that an organization that's doing appreciative inquiry can start with a question that's mission oriented, but it's not about ourselves, but it's about the world outside. What difference do we want to make? What is the world that we want to see? And how can we make an impact to move the world? And I think that that's not different from appreciative inquiry, but it's kind of elevated it and expanded it into a sense of how it can go into a wider application. He talked about organizations that don't just work on themselves, but they work on ecosystems. And so let's commit ourselves to having a progressive ecosystem of research with a spiritual paradigm to make an impact not only academically, but in the joy that we see spreading in our planetary family.
Thank you, Dr. Heaton. I guess we are coming to the end of the 90 minutes. Anyone else would like to add on? Anil has stepped away. So anybody would like to add on anything more? Yes, Dr. Gyani.
So Dennis and others, we talked a lot about consciousness. And I think a very intriguing question is, how would consciousness or higher state of consciousness affect ethics? Because we also see that the world, the global world, is suffering from a lot of ethical challenges. So I think it'll be exciting to know what new stuff have you seen in the link between consciousness and ethics, rather than just ethics alone. I'm doing a course on the biomedical ethics, where the issues of dead donor and all kinds of issues are coming up. So can we say a few words on ethics?
I'll just reiterate what I briefly talked about in the middle of the session today, is that ethical or moral reasoning is correlated with experiences of higher states of consciousness and transcendence, and also that this affects the brain. So I certainly, without this type of deeper transformation, I find it hard to just derive ethics from philosophical books. And it has, to just bring it back to the paradigm we're talking about, transforming the knower would include the ethical actor and the ethical actor's self-realization.
Any empirical work at MIU in this direction?
Yeah, I referred to some, and I'll send you a reference about it, Ray. It's good to see you again.
Good to see you.
And I'll be giving you a call to follow up.
Thank you.
Just to add to that, I think Dr. Heaton had mentioned consciousness and consciousness together, right? So I think that's where the ethics comes in. So again, thank you all for joining, and just another plug to MSR. I know some of us from MIU are pretty much involved, but those who are not, it's a place where you'll find other people outside MIU with similar thinking, similar interest, similar minds. So great place to be a part of, and obviously participating in the Academy of Management events. So thanks all. Thank you, Dr. Heaton, and thank you to the MSR leadership for making this possible. And thanks to all the wonderful participants who could be here today. The program is being recorded, and we will share the recording with the extended Academy of Management MSR community, as well as with the MIU students. Thank you. And till the next seminar, which Anil will announce, everyone take care and be safe.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye now.
Thank you.
Bye.